where
and then the environment was cleaned up.
The first time I was hearing about this stuff, it was totally new to me.
With social impact consulting. Hello everyone, my name is Efwa Ede with Social Impact Consulting. I'm a development consultant with 20 years of experience working with NGOs, international NGOs, and bilateral agencies to work in project support, monitoring and evaluation, and civil society strengthening. So now, I saw that local NGOs lack the capacity to manage large-scale projects, which can in turn impact their various communities because they have the connection based on their backgrounds. So this made me create this channel so that I can add value to you for free once you subscribe to this channel and get notified of upcoming videos. I look forward to hearing from you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. Welcome to another episode of the Development Sector Series, known as Devsectorseries. If you're still here hanging with me, just put your name up. Let me know where you're watching from. You know, technology is great, but it's not perfect. So we just kind of have to roll with the punches and keep it moving. So again, if you're watching this, make sure you like and subscribe, like and share so that it gets to as many people as possible. Because what do we want to do? We want to make sure that the development sector and what we're doing for society is actually showcased to the public so that people know that people actually care about what's going on in the country and not just sitting in their homes and complaining about it. So thank you so much for hanging tight with me. Technology, we need it, but it's not perfect. So even as much preparation as you do and make sure that there are no glitches, you know, nobody's infallible. Okay. So again, thank you so much for your patience. You know, those of you on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, thank you for your patience. Please like and share, like and share. Those of you on YouTube, keep subscribing. We're over 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. I am so excited about that. Now, just a quick announcement. I know last week after interviewing Joe from Tola Data, I said I was going to interview Idayat Hassan of the Center for Democracy Development. However, like I said, technology, where I was, the network was horrible. The router wasn't working. So I just didn't want to showcase you all an inferior product if I had anything to do with it. So we had to postpone it. And as you know, Idayat running a regional organization is extremely busy. So I was unable to we're going to just work on rescheduling and everything. But one thing I'm excited about, the lineup of people that I'm actually featuring on Dev Sector Series, I'm like, I have a lineup of women who are strong, powerful, and making an impact in their own right. So I'm really on the roll, and I'm excited about that, because when I first started Dev Sector Series and reaching out to my sisters, they were like, oh, I'm busy. Oh, I have a lot to do. I have a meeting. I have this to do and that to do. And I'm like, ladies, we gotta showcase our stuff and what we do. So I'm just excited about it. I just felt like the International Women's Month just gave me the right energy, to energize a lot of the women around me to say, okay, well, I am doing some work. So let me communicate that to Dev Sector Series, especially because some of them are communicating their work, but not to Dev Sector Series, but to other platforms. So I'm excited that they're doing that. So I have a dynamic one who is here with me, and she is just phenomenal. I met her, I believe, last year while we were working on NGO self-regulation, and she's extremely analytical, extremely confident, and really understands the nuts and bolts of the development sector, the nuts and bolts, the organizational development of it. And she also understands her chosen thematic area. You get what I'm saying? So she's actually a second generation development professional in an organization that is phenomenal, known as the Food Basket Foundation, right? She is the executive director, of the Food Basket Foundation International, okay? It's an indigenous nonprofit NGO focused on food and nutrition security, poverty alleviation, sustainable livelihoods, and regulatory environment. Okay, she has also made remarkable contributions to civil society scaling up nutrition in Nigeria, that is CS-SUNN, and is a member. She's also the chair of Safeguarding the Online Civic Space and the co-chair of the National Technical Committee on Self-Regulation. Okay, Dr. Akinyele is a nutrition and development professional. She's a leader, a teacher, trainer, and public speaker. She also holds a doctorate in organizational leadership, a master's in counseling, a master's and bachelor's in computer science. Okay, she is just loaded. Okay, and Dr. Akinyele is passionate about nutrition, health, leadership development, and education. With no further ado, let me introduce to some and present to others Dr. Funmi Akinyele, the CEO and Executive Director of Food Basket Foundation International. Please give it up for her, y'all. Hello, Dr. Akinyele. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, F1.
Good.
It's so good to be here. Thank you for having me here.
No problem. Thank you so much for being patient with me and technology, okay? It's
No worries.
You're just kind of like, okay, what's going on here? And bachelor's and master's in computer science. You're like, yeah, girl, I ain't in there.
Yeah, so we know the peculiarities in Nigeria, so no worries.
Thanks a lot. I didn't mention again to the audience that Social Impact Consulting is also producing a documentary called Untold Impact, and I actually Dr. Akinyele is actually featured in that documentary, in the thematic area of nutrition. And man, myself and the crew were like, oh my
that
God.
was a lot of fun.
They were just, I mean, really excited about that. So people are just going to get a little teaser of some of the things you were saying. The first question, which I asked you then in the documentary, is tell us, what is nutrition?
Okay, thank you very much. I like this question actually, because nutrition is confusing for some. If you ask a person on the street, they'll say, "Oh, isn't it food?" Yeah, it's food. We eat, nutrition is food. However, nutrition as a discipline, like my father used to say, is multisectoral, multidisciplinary, and multifaceted. Nutrition actually solves a lot of problems. In addition to promoting good health, if you think about it like a car, right? You have to give your car what it needs in order to run well. Like you give it petrol, you give it, if it's a diesel car, you give it, what it needs for it to run and function optimally. The same thing with nutrients. Nutrients are those things that your body needs in order to function well, for your tissues to grow, for your cells to grow well, and basically for you to live a well and healthy life, promoting overall quality of life. We talk about food. If you think about Maslow's hierarchy, we talk about food as, a basic need. But it's not just food, right? What does your body do with that food? That's where the nutrients come in. And nutrition, like I said earlier, solves problems. Problem of malnutrition, which is huge. Nigeria is second on the global scale for malnutrition. And when we talk about malnutrition, we talk about overnutrition, undernutrition, and micronutrient deficiencies, which is basically hidden hunger. And then, nutrition also has to do with preventing diseases in older age, or long-term diseases like non-communicable diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, nutrition covers a whole spectrum of things.
Okay, thank you so much for that very substantive answer. So you're talking about the nuts of it and talking about the complexity of nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just going to go into the next question. So you've talked about like what your father said. I'm amazed that you're a second generation development professional. That for me, it's fascinating. And I think hopefully we'll have more of that in Nigeria. There's a lot of that in the West, but we have more of that in Nigeria as well. So tell us about the Food Basket Foundation International and its pivotal role in advocacy interventions in Nigeria.
Okay, Food Basket started in 1989. My dad had a dream. He wanted to ensure that, people who are poor, or particularly the most vulnerable, were able to get, overall good health and, prevent disease and basically have a sustainable livelihood, right? And over time, Food Basket has done a lot in terms of advocacy, policy, community outreaches, and interventions. For instance, the National Policy on Food and Nutrition, we were instrumental at one of the people who were able to get that passed in 2001 and also in 2016, where it was finally approved. Also, in terms of the AFSNS, Agricultural Food Security Nutrition Strategy. I always forget what that acronym is, but it's the Food and Nutrition Strategy related to agriculture. We were part of domesticating that in 3 states, doing nutrition-sensitive agricultural interventions, and basically CS-SUNN. My dad was instrumental in starting CS-SUNN, which is essentially an advocacy outfit. Yeah, he was the first executive chairman actually before he died. Of CS-SUNN. Yeah, so Food Basket has always been involved in advocacy and getting policies passed, getting budget lines increased in terms of nutrition, getting them cash back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then also with the school feeding program that Food Basket was instrumental in starting, there had to be advocacy for that and all of that. So we've done things related to advocacy, related to research, community outreaches, developing knowledge products. For instance, the food composition table. My dad was instrumental in creating that, whereby they examined the nutrition or nutrients in the different kinds of food in Nigeria. And that was 1995. And then that was expanded in about 2016 with a committee around the country, whereby we looked at different foods in Nigeria and what the nutrients were actually made up of. So yeah.
So you all have had a long history of nutrition advocacy in Nigeria. That is really amazing work. And even yourself, I feel like your father, your late father, if he were alive, he would be so proud of you, because you're really making your own mark, aside from him, which is amazing. Well done. So so now you've talked about the advocacy, what Food Basket Foundation International has done with regards to advocacy since the 80s. So now you've touched on this a bit in the first question of what is nutrition. So let's talk about the state of nutrition in Nigeria right now. What are we looking at?
Okay, so nutrition has actually gained traction in Nigeria over the past couple of years. Now there are more conversations around nutrition, there are more interventions, there are more programs, policy implementation, et cetera, et cetera. One of the major problems has been malnutrition. Like I said earlier, Nigeria is second on the global scale for malnutrition, and 1 out of every 4 children who die as partly because of malnutrition. So it's huge. And what exactly is malnutrition? Undernutrition is the main one that we talk about, because that's when you see children who are either too short for their age or too thin for their age. And then you have the overnutrition, which is obesity, which, a certain portion of the population has. And then we also talk about the hidden hunger. This one is actually really huge, because a person who looks normal could have micronutrient deficiencies. So part of what is happening in Nigeria now is, trying to prevent some of these things. When you have undernutrition, then you have interventions to fix it. That's what we call nutrition-specific interventions, where you have maybe like a severely acutely malnourished child, and then you want to try to fix that. But now there are more conversations around how do we then prevent the state of malnutrition, starting from adolescence. How do we encourage adolescents to focus on adequate nutrition so that we break the cycle of malnutrition? Because if there's an underweight adolescent, or an underweight woman who gives birth, could then have a low birth weight baby, and that would lead to malnutrition, and then the cycle continues. So now there's more conversations and more interventions around prevention, starting from maternal nutrition, adolescent nutrition, and then nutrition education, encouraging people to grow home gardens, community gardens, so that people find it easier to incorporate nutritious foods into their diet. But we still have a long way to go. There are some states who have budget lines for nutrition, but sometimes, even though it's allocated, it's not released, and even if it's released, it may not be used for the original intended intervention. So we still need more in terms of increase in knowledge as to the importance of nutrition in nation building, and also in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Increase in policy implementation. We have wonderful policies and plans. However, they're not as well implemented. And if they're implemented, we would have significantly better indicators of nutrition. So yeah, we have made progress. However, we still have some ways to go.
Okay. So that's so another question. How have we as a nation been consuming the nutritional requirement? Because you talked about hidden hunger, you talked about malnutrition, you talked about low birth weight. So, like, as a nation in general, have we been doing the right thing in terms of consuming the right nutritional requirements?
Yes and no. I think probably more no than yes. A nutritionist will tell you, that an adequate diet involves getting quality nutrients on a daily basis that would help and aid your tissue growth and cell growth and maintaining your energy and all of that. And when we talk about having an adequate diet, we talk about not just macronutrients, but also micronutrients, phytonutrients, vitamins, minerals, all of that. However, our diet typically consists of carbohydrates. And then there's this thing about with the healthy plate where you're supposed to have half of your plate with fruits and vegetables, a quarter of your plate with like proteins, and then like the other quarter with like whole grains. But our plates are typically like 2/3 or 3/4 carbohydrates, maybe a little bit of some protein and some micronutrients. So it's really, we used to call it balanced diet, but a balanced diet is difficult to measure. You can't quantify it, you can't qualify it. And so that then transitioned and changed into adequate diet because that could be qualified and quantified. For instance, we talk about having a 5-star diet. I mean, I love staying in 5-star hotels. I don't get to stay in them too often, but everybody would love to stay in a 5-star hotel, right? And so we talk about 5-star diets, whereby there are 5 classes of food, and so you're encouraged to get at least 4 of those in every meal, and that's why nutrition is so important. And I think I lost you there.
No, you didn't. I just
welcome back. Okay, yeah. Right.
I didn't want to.
I think we can do better. Yeah, I think we can do better in consuming nutritional requirements. I think part of it also is the lack of information about what is actually what constitutes the nutritional requirements, because the nutritional requirements for a baby will be different from the nutritional requirement for an adolescent who is active or not active, and will be different from the nutritional requirements of an adult, and will be different from the nutritional requirements of an older adult. So essentially the requirements are different based on life stage and activity level. But essentially the basic thing is having the carbs, having a good mix of micro nutrients, vitamins, minerals, and yeah, that's it.
Okay. So I remember when I was growing up, I would look at my mom's dresser and she would have a ton of vitamins, like vitamin K, vitamin A, vitamin D. I think she had the whole alphabet of vitamins. Just when I was growing up. So what is the role of taking those extra vitamins, in addition to your food? Is it, do they help, or how can people address hidden hunger and not getting the adequate nutritional requirements?
Okay, so in terms of supplementation, people really should consult their dietitian, doctor, nutritionist, all of that. However, generally speaking, it's best to get your nutrients from food. And it's very easy to do. Fruits and vegetables, you have your fiber, you have your vitamins. It's very easy to do. All you have to, and Nigeria particularly has a rich variety of food sources, whereby people can actually get those nutrients or micronutrients. One, I think the problem is a lack of information, because people may tend to typically eat the same kinds of food all the time, and maybe they may then be deficient in some vitamins, which will then necessitate maybe taking a supplement. However, supplements should be exactly that, a supplement to the food versus the replacement of that food or of that nutrient. And a lot of people tend to do the opposite. They'll be like, oh yeah, I'm taking a vitamin A supplement, versus eating more carrots, eating more tomatoes, eating more, of the foods that give you vitamin A. Or yeah, I'm taking a vitamin K supplement or vitamin B supplement. It's like, yeah, but you can get that from your food. If you're eating the right foods in the right amounts, you're then more likely to have the right amounts of nutrients. So you won't necessarily need to take those supplements. But I mean, again, supplementation is not a bad thing necessarily. It's just, some people overuse it, and then they tend to focus on that versus then getting the nutrients from food. For instance, if you're a vegetarian, you may need to take some supplements to replace some of the nutrients that you're not getting from meat. For instance, iron. If you don't eat meat, it's difficult for you to get iron, or the sufficient amount of iron. So then you may need to get some supplements to do that. So again, it's sort of in a case by case basis, but taking a multivitamin in addition to food should be fine.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So now we're gonna go into pre-birth, if we may, and maternal and child health. So we keep hearing, and since you all are CS-SUNN, they have this campaign going on about the first 1,000 days. I spoke to Michael a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about the first 1,000-day campaign in terms of, a child's first 1,000 days, they need to get what they need before things become irreversible. So, and nutrition's role in maternal and child health. Can you just shed a bit more light on that?
Okay, so the first 1,000 days is very simple. It's basically just from conception to the end of year 2 of a child's life. That's all it is. It's just from when the child is conceived to when the child turns 2 years old, because then you have, it literally is 1,000 days, because from conception to when the child is born, it's about 270 days, and then you have 365 days in year 1 and then 365 days in year 2. So that's what the first 1,000 days is. And the reason that's such a big deal is that, as they said, things become irreversible if they're not, quote, addressed or prevented by that age, which is where the issues around exclusive breastfeeding, complementary feeding come in. And why is that? Do you know that within the first 16 days of a child being conceived, 61% of their brain is developed? And yes, and if there is inadequate nutrients, for instance, the folic acid, then that child's brain may not develop as well as, and then there might be like some diseases that, that come up as a result of that, which is why women of reproductive age are encouraged to take folic acid prior. Just if you're a woman of reproductive age, take folic acid, particularly if you're trying to get pregnant, because even before a woman knows she's pregnant, sometimes the child's already had their brain formed. So, again, the first 1,000 days is supposed to be about prevention. And so, and even within that, the first 56 days, which is basically the first 8 weeks of pregnancy, are even more crucial, because there's some things that happen within that time frame that are dependent on maternal nutrition for the infant nutrition. And then when the child is born, there's the advice of early initiation of breastfeeding, because the breast milk is the wonder drug, for lack of a better word, for an infant between 0 and 6 months. The child needs nothing else. Everything the child needs is in that breast milk. It helps with brain development, increased intelligence, increased immunity against childhood infections. The benefits are just humongous. And that's why there's a campaign around that to sort of say, listen, there are things you can do to help set your child up for a fantastic future. Because as the child's cells are forming, as the child's internal organs are forming, the nutrition contributes to the degree to which they're going to form well, which will prevent, a tendency or a risk for obesity and cardiovascular diseases even later in life. So that's one of the major reasons. And then if nutrition is not paid attention to during that time, then the child has a tendency to be either too short or too thin for his or her age. And the big deal with that is that it affects brain development. And so if a child could have the potential of becoming a doctor, maybe the child's nutrition could affect their intelligence so much that they may or may not end up going to school, and they may just end up being maybe a mechanic. Not that there's anything wrong with that, except that if the child has a potential to do more and is unable to because they didn't get the adequate nutrition, then it becomes problematic. So essentially, it's just doing whatever you can to set your child up for a great future. So there's the exclusive breastfeeding between 0 and 6 months, and then between 6 months and 2 years, there's the adequate complementary feeding, which again talk about the 5 classes of food and the appropriate portions, and all of that. But yeah, that's why there's a big deal about the first 1,000 days, 0 water, between 0 and 6 months, adequate complementary feeding, and all of that. Yeah.
Okay, this is just really enlightening, Dr. Akinyele. Can you just talk about where Nigeria is with regards to nutrition awareness and maternal and child health? Because I don't know if a lot of people know about this. Where are we as a nation in that training?
Yeah. Well, I think there's an increase in awareness because for decades, people have been talking about this, and there is improvement in behavior change, right? Which is the whole point of social behavioral campaigns and nutrition education. But we still have portions of people who, one, don't know, and others who just don't agree. It's not like they don't know, they just don't agree, and they feel like this is too hard. I have to go to work. I can't breastfeed, or health workers, or maybe the baby's having a hard time latching on. The health worker is just like, you know what, it's fine, go and buy formula, kind of thing. So a lot of things is not even because people don't know. People breastfeed, for instance, but exclusive breastfeeding, some people will say, oh, in this heat, why can't I give my child water? The child will be thirsty. But breast milk has adequate water. It's 88% water. So it's just, or even culturally, there's some cultures and some religions that have rights when a child is born, and that prevent, like exclusive breastfeeding. But after that, the mother can still go to exclusively breastfeeding. So it's just, I think there needs to be an increase in knowledge probably at the grassroots level, because what we're doing, a lot of it is more on maybe the national level, maybe state levels. But I think at the community level, we probably need to do more, and then make it easier for people to actually do it. Because if a mother, for instance, has a stall and she has to take her child to the stall, like a market woman, for instance, she might be like, look, I don't want to exclusive breastfeed, just get me formula. Or if there are difficulties latching on at the very beginning, or if the child is not suckling well in the beginning, or if there's like an engorged breast or anything like that, there are problems, with some of these things, but they can be addressed and they can be fixed. And and then grandmothers, family members, grandmothers are like, oh no, we gave them water, there was no problem, they're fine now. So those societal influences also need to be addressed. There's just so much around it. So there's the need for awareness, yes, but there's also the need for social behavioral change campaigns and, town hall sensitizations at the community level. Ask people, what are the challenges? How can we help them? And particularly health workers. I mean, true story. I spoke with one of the health workers, social mobilization officers, in I will not mention the state, and she was like, "Listen, when I had my baby, I got formula." These are the people who are going out to the communities and trying to bring awareness to them. So there's a disparity. There's a lot that needs to be done, particularly making it easier for people to do it.
So that is really enlightening, very enlightening for everybody, not just for the series itself. So another question for you. So what can the government do for this sensitization and for these behavioral change initiatives, for them to now begin to shed light on it? Because this is important, because some of this stuff that you're telling me, I'm just like, oh. When I was nursing, I did a few things differently. So it's just kind of, so this is really, really enlightening for me, myself. So what can the government do to change what is going on? Because if it's starting from conception, and then we're having the issue, our indices are so bad in Nigeria, what can the government do to pivot and make and really focus on preventative measures, especially in nutrition?
Yeah. So there are three major areas, I think. There needs to be like an increase in political will, because if it's anything the government prioritizes becomes, it's good. So there needs to be an increase in political will, increase in budget allocations, and particularly releases and utilization. It's not enough to assign, a certain amount to health interventions. We need them to do it to nutrition interventions, and not just nutrition specific, where they're building more community management of acute malnutrition centers where the problem has already occurred. But let's allocate more to nutrition sensitive, nutrition advocacy, and behavioral change campaigns, right? Because those are the ones that will prevent future occurrences. It's like this, right? If you think about having a fire, if there's a forest fire, how do you fix it? You don't just throw water or whatever it is you use to kill a fire. You first of all contain it, and then you eliminate it. Otherwise, it will continue to spread. And so what we need the government to do is allocate more, release, and cash back those allocations, and also implement the wonderful policies and plans that we have. If they are implemented, for instance, a woman who just had a baby and has to go back to work in 3 months, sometimes it's difficult to breastfeed. I mean, even though there are still ways around it, but it could be easier. And I also know as a person who runs a business that it's difficult to allow somebody, especially if that's the only one, to be gone for 6 months. So why don't we have creches in the offices, right? Have a creche whereby the woman can bring her child to work, go breastfeed the child as needed, especially within the first 6 months, and then, go back to work, kind of thing. Why don't we make it easy? Why don't we continue to train the health workers and give them incentives to do the right thing? Particularly with the early initiation and all of that. So that's so basically funding, political will, increased funding, cash backing, and also basically making it providing incentives to even organizations to encourage these kinds of things, and then encouraging communities. Like, let's say there's a prize, for instance, or if your community has a community garden, that you sustain over a period of time, then you get funding to expand the garden, something like that, to encourage some of these practices, to encourage people within communities to learn about nutrition, to learn about the importance, and to communicate it. There's one thing I read about, they were called friendship benches, whereby, like a younger, in communities, they just had these benches whereby they had trained some older women to go and sit there and listen to people's problems. So anybody could just come there and sit next to them, talk to them about whatever challenges they were having, and then the woman with her training would be able to help walk them through it. Why can't we do something like that for nutrition? Whereby maybe a grandmother, a mother, an older mother who has been trained can help teenage mothers or younger women who may be struggling with their first child or their first pregnancy, maybe not knowing how to do some of these things, maybe encountering some of the problems, and then we had this ward committees before, which we don't have anymore. I don't think they're functional, whereby, because it's at the ward level that some of these changes can actually happen. So yes, we have the National Committee of Food and Nutrition. We have the state committees of food and nutrition. We're even supposed to have the local government committees on food and nutrition. However, so far, we only stop at the state level because they're not funded. Most of these committees are actually funded by donors and not the government. So the government, while they're prioritizing agriculture, which is fine, also need to prioritize nutrition in agriculture. Because if we just do agriculture, we just do food, then we're not really focusing on nutrition. We need to say, okay, let's teach people how to grow nutritious food, not just how to grow food, how to preserve the food through the value chain to when it gets to the person's plate. And also, how do we get them to preserve nutrients when it's on the plate? So basically, the government should help with funding, implementing policy, and ensuring that the ward development committees are functional, because that's when it can really get to the grassroots and get to the communities.
That was quite comprehensive. Thank you so much, Funmi. There was something you mentioned that really stuck out to me. You said teaching, like the government is really focusing on agriculture because, obviously for exports and economic development. Also, if they're also focusing on nutrition, you're not only teaching farmers to grow food, but you're also teaching them that these are foods they need to consume, they need to preserve. Because I think I was talking to, a couple of years ago, I was talking to the CEO of the Aliko Dangote Foundation. I know they are working on nutrition as well. And one thing she said was that a lot of their beneficiaries grow food, but they don't eat it. They just grow it and sell it.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah,
they eat malnourished food, and then they end up getting SAM or MAM or different. That sensitization is needed. So when you said that, that really stood out to me. That there are people growing food, but they are not consuming it, which kind of almost defeats the purpose. So
yeah, actually, then that's the thing, right? Those people who that's their livelihood. They're growing the food because they want to send their children to school. They want to, get a house or, however small or modest it is. So that's their source of livelihood. And so they sell that so they can get income. Part of how the government can then help is, yes, I know there's some conditional cash transfers programs that are happening, but how do we make sure that a smallholder farmer, a farmer who is a subsistence farmer, can increase production even by 20 to 50%, right? So that they don't feel like they have to sell everything. Also help them understand that, yes, it's good for you to get income, maybe even help them with other income generating activities around agriculture so that they can then also incorporate nutrition. Because it's not one or the other. It has to be everything, because there's a saying that health is wealth, and that's true across board. A lot of government officials, people in the upper socioeconomic class or even middle class can afford to go to places like India, the UK, the US, Germany, etc., to get medical treatment. However, nutrition prevents a focus on nutrition prevents a lot of some of these things that are non-communicable. And so if there is an increased focus on nutrition, then we can prevent long-term diseases, and then we can reduce the cost on health systems and thereby increase, the economic growth of the nation. So nutrition is connected even to economic growth. And you can't say that people shouldn't make money. Everybody has a source of livelihood. And so if that's your source of livelihood, you want to make money. There are needs. You have to buy clothes, and all of that. So it's very important that nutrition gains as much traction as agriculture, because we shouldn't talk about one without the other, honestly. Because at the end of the day, if you grow food that doesn't benefit the body, so you're full. But then at the end of the day, how much good are you doing to yourself? And also, one of the things I forgot to mention is the fact that water, sanitation, and hygiene is also a huge component of nutrition, because personal and environmental sanitation, huge. Hygiene in food preparation, huge. And all of that. The government has a lot to do. However, they can't do it alone.
Okay, thanks for that. Was just a good segue to my next question. So before I ask my next question, thank you all so much for hanging with me. You guys are my rock stars. I love you so much. Thank you again for hanging with me. Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. I appreciate y'all. The technology stuff kind of got in the way. Again, we appreciate you. I'm gonna say that on behalf of me and Dr. Akinyele, because she was hanging with me.
Yes, we appreciate you hanging in there. Thank you.
So also, if you guys have any questions for Dr. Akinyele, make sure she's gonna be saying that she's gonna be answering the last question. So get your questions in so that we can ask her any further questions from the audience. Again, you guys hung with me, so we really want to see if we can get your voice on this topic. So my question to you now, Dr. Akinyele, is: you said the government cannot do it alone. So
no, they can't.
In the role of civil society in the process, what more can they do? What I mean, you've talked about some of what you've done, because generationally, Food Basket Foundation International has really been the forerunner of nutrition advocacy and interventions in Nigeria since the 80s. So, I mean, you're talking about almost 40 years. So, what has been the role of civil society in this process, and what more can be done?
Okay. I think advocacy has been a huge portion of it. Community sensitization and service delivery has been another part of it. For instance, twice a year, the government does, there's a Maternal, Newborn, and Child Health Week. And, vitamin A supplementation, albendazole, which is deworming, and multivitamins for women have been, provided. But, the government more often than not does not have sufficient quantities, and people like, UNICEF, Vitamin Angels, all of that, they provide some of these commodities. And then, we have been a source of providing that to Oyo State in the past, and then monitoring the distribution of that. So civil society can get to the grassroots. In fact, civil society organizations are those who basically help with reaching the communities, with sometimes mobilizing people in the communities, education, town halls, going to schools to do programs with adolescents, maybe starting like peer clubs, maybe distributing IC materials, doing nutrition education, all of that. And of course, CSOs will continue to do that because of the passion, because of wanting to ensure that these things are done well. And one of the growing things is the implementation of home and community gardens. People always will think, oh, you need a huge plot of land before you can grow something, but you don't. You can do container gardening, what they call container gardening. I mean, recently I heard of somebody talking about, using plastic bottles for irrigation in dry season farming. You can use a sack, you can use a tire, you can use almost any container once you are able to get good quality sand and good quality seeds. And that helps, because you can grow vegetables. You can grow some fruit, which then you don't have to spend money on, and then you can use the money and spend on something else. And then it also helps you. For instance, even if all you had to eat was noodles, if you have ugu in your background, you can go grab some ugu, put it in there. If you have some carrots, you can put it in there. You can, to make it a little bit more nutritious, So that's one of the things that, civil society organizations are promoting now is home and community gardens. And also in terms of food preparation, because sometimes even if the food you get is nutritious, by the time you prepare it, it's lost because of how it's being prepared. Then, of course, continued research for evidence-based advocacy, to influence policy and all of that. But, well, I guess some civil societies do provide money, but that's one of the roles that the government needs to help with, to continue to help with, even though we have donors and bilateral partners who do that.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. That was extremely, extremely helpful. Girl,
Current condition, they've taken power.
We are flowing. We are flowing really well. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Akinyele. I got some feedback from a few of our audience members. I have something on from Dr. Odiase on YouTube. She said, Devsectorseries, well done for doing justice to this important topic. This will go a long way towards creating awareness in the role of proper nutrition in both children and adults. Thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Appreciate you.
Wait 1 second. I'm going to turn something off here.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, we as we
Yeah, because they
know.
have to turn on the gen, so
Yes,
need to
yes,
make sure
yes.
the AC was off. All right.
So we have another. I got some feedback on from somebody on LinkedIn, Mr. Unyibolaji A. Ajetumubi. He said, "Wonderful session." I have a few of those, and then I have from Mrs. Ekwase Egbe. She says, "I love the crèche in offices. Very important." So we have quite a few, just great comments concerning this topic, Dr. Akinyele. I knew you were going to appreciate it. So we just before you go, if you can just let us know your final thoughts.
Okay. Nutrition is essential to life. It really is. If you think about it, just from a lifestyle perspective, the more nutrients you have, the more optimally your body will function, because that's how it's designed to be. And as we say, prevention is always better than cure. And nutrition cuts across 12 of the 17 goals of the Sustainable Development. So that's how important it really is. And we need to focus on it through the entire life cycle, both in terms of promoting good health and also preventing diseases. And at the end of the day, I mean, if you want to live to be 90 years old, you want to ensure that you're able to function optimally. WHO has this healthy decade of aging, and nutrition is essential to that. Of course, there's physical activity and all these other things, but the more you focus on nutrition in terms of prevention, the better you will be able to live. I say, I once had a car that I drove for 18 years.
Wow.
Yes, exactly. That's a long time. I got it new. It was 84 miles on it, and I drove it up till about 270,000 miles. That car somebody else still bought it and used it, like for I don't know how long from that. What is the point? The point is, for that car, I followed the manufacturer instructions. They said, change the spark plugs. I changed the spark plugs. They said, change the water this. I changed it. So they had every so often do this, right? And so the car is designed to run for a lengthy period of time. And once you do what you need to do to as suggested by the manufacturer, then it runs, and it runs well. Same thing with your body. Your body is designed to run optimally with adequate nutrition, rest, proper exercise, stress reduction, all of that. And with the nutrition piece, nutrition is probably, I would guesstimate, 70% of health. And so if you focus on that, then you give yourself a chance to live a long, healthy life. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. That was a really great way to break that down, Dr. Akinyele. Again, this is not going to be our last conversation on Devsectorseries.
I know this. We have just touched the surface. Nutrition has so much.
It's just amazing, and we had I had a conversation with Michael Sumbola as well from the Lagos Food Bank. I am going to be bringing some other nutrition experts as well, bringing in folks from CS-SUNN, talking about some of the nuts and bolts of nutrition advocacy, as we've talked about, because these are some very important issues. And just talking about what development experts like yourself are doing to really meet the area of national development in Nigeria, and supporting government and supporting private sector, just to make sure that we have a good, sustainable way of life. Again, Dr. Akinyele, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, right. Indeed. Thank you for having me. This is fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Well, we had Dr. Funmi Akinyele, she's the CEO, Executive Director of the Food Basket Foundation International, and I was just blown away by the details she provided with regards to addressing nutrition in Nigeria. So our next episode, which is next week, Wednesday at 12 noon, if network is great, if conditions are favorable, which they are, we're going to be having our very own Cynthia Mbamalu, who is the program director of Yaga Africa Initiative. There was something that Dr. Akinyele talked about regarding, making sure that the community sensitization and advocacy starts on the local level and on the ward level. We're not just going to be talking about national elections. We're going to be talking about the local government elections and the advocacy on the local level to communities and increasing citizen engagement on the local level. So I'm very, very, very excited about that. So again, Untold Impact, the documentary, is going to be coming up soon. We're working on post-production on that project. I'm very, very excited about it. So just stay tuned. Once it starts coming up, just we'll let you know. I am going to be showing clips of behind the scenes footages of what we did in Lagos State. So just make sure you just watch and just know that it's coming up. We're also going to be coming up with a campaign of what does civil society mean to you. So those are conversations that you're going to be hearing as we're working on post-production, so that it just whets your appetite just a little bit, that we have a great meal of the 4-part documentary coming up, Untold Impact. It's 4 parts. It's talking about the role of civil society in health, education, nutrition, and marginalized groups, which is women, youth, and persons with disabilities. I look forward to seeing you next week, the Development Sector Series. Stay tuned, and I will see you again next week. Take care. All right.
Then the environment was cleaned up.
The first time I was hearing about this stuff, it was totally new to me.
With social impact consulting. Hello everyone, my name is Efwa Elens Ede with Social Impact Consulting. I'm a development consultant with 20 years of experience working with NGOs, international NGOs, and bilateral agencies to work in project support, monitoring and evaluation, and civil society strengthening. So now, I saw that local NGOs lack the capacity to manage large-scale projects, which can in turn impact their various communities because they have the connection based on their backgrounds. So this made me create this channel so that I can add value to you for free once you subscribe to this channel and get notified of upcoming videos. I look forward to hearing from you.